This is The Wheel Weaves, a Wheel of Time podcast with no spoilers. Welcome, listeners. This podcast is safe for first-time readers because it's made by a longtime fan who's going to be really careful about what he says in this bonus episode. I'm your host, Brett, and I'm taking on the task of reading through this 15-book mega-series and bringing you extra bonus content. I'm joined by my co-host, Dani, a brand new reader to the series, who will act as a listener on this journey.
I share insight too.
That's true. Okay. In this first bonus episode, I know you don't know anything that I've prepared for this topic, correct?
No, I don't even have notes in front of me.
So we're just going to wing it pretty much on your side of things.
I prepared myself with a glass of wine, and you're in your heyday.
All right.
This is essentially, you've told me this is essentially everything that we've missed. I don't know how we missed anything in your notes because we talked for almost an hour about like 14 pages.
Yeah, so you might actually be proud of me because I narrowed down my pages and pages and pages of notes to just literally 2 pages of cliff notes.
Yeah, great.
So I came up with a nice topic for this bonus episode,
Kay.
And we're going to call it Real World Inspirations and Symbolism.
Ooh, fun.
Yeah, so
that actually sounds great.
Yeah, the title's catchy, hopefully, but we'll see if it's actually.
No, but that sounds really interesting. I'm excited now.
Okay, good.
I wasn't sure if I was going to be excited for this, but that sounds good.
Well, so full disclosure, so obviously we are only on chapter 7 of The Eye of the World right now, so there's going to be no spoilers up to that point.
Yes. Okay, that makes sense. I get it.
Yeah, so we're only going to talk about stuff that's happened in the first 7 chapters of The Eye of the World. So if you haven't read that far, then you shouldn't be listening to this bonus episode yet.
Right, that means there will be spoilers, unless you want to be spoiled, and that's fine.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So obviously we can't really do like character analysis or anything like that yet because we really just met all the characters. So that's why I picked. That's why I picked the real world symbolism in this first episode purely for bonus content.
Yeah, cool.
So far in The Eye of the World, we've been exposed to a whole lot of, real world symbolism in symbols that we can actually recognize, right?
Yes.
So I listed a few of them here, but I wanted to back up a little bit and actually talk about RJ's concept of time being cyclical, the whole wheel of time, because that's actually drawing from, real world religions. So notably things like Hinduism, Sikhism, Buddhism, they actually have that same concept. And they have a word for it, the Wheel of Time, and I'm probably going to butcher this, but it's called Kalakakra. So that's like the word for the Wheel of Time. So in his series, this isn't like a brand new concept. Obviously, he's just making up. This is something that's been around for a long, long time.
Right.
So in RJ's universe, his whole quote, I just want to kind of get it out on the table here so we can break it down. And this is the same paragraph he opens every book with. He says, the Wheel of Time turns, and ages come and pass, leaving memories that become legend. Legend fades to myth, and even myth is long forgotten when the age that gave it birth comes again. So his whole thing is that on this Wheel of Time, there's 7 spokes, and it's turning, and each age, by the time it comes back around, everything's already forgotten. Now, the interesting part is that throughout this series, he actually leaves a couple of hints, right? And it's not technically laid out there directly, but he leaves hints that our time, so like real life right now in 2019 and the years prior, our age is actually an age that's on his Wheel of Time.
Okay.
Yeah, so
That's fun.
Yeah, he leaves a couple hints, and I'm going to point out some of them, and as you read this series, you can kind of start to pick up on them, but he actually leaves hints that say that our age is like a prior age before like the time Randall Thor is in right now.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so I wanted to point out a couple of these ones and give you a couple of background pieces of information and all the boring things that were talked about, especially in one notable chapter, the Gleeman, right, when he's rattling off all of those stories. Yep. I'm going to break that down for you too today. So, like you said, I'm in my heyday. This is the stuff that I absolutely love. So
right,
first,
and I'm hoping that you can shed some light for me because I'm still not 100% about these ages.
Okay.
And I think that you have said before that I'm not supposed to know yet.
Correct, yeah.
And it actually breaks down and becomes more important to the plot later on.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we do definitely learn more about ages. Biggest thing I'll say about ages is that they're not technically any set amount of years. So, for example, it's not like an age is 1,000 years or anything like that. There's no noticeable amount of time.
Yeah.
Typically, an age is marked by a critical event.
Okay. Well, that's just like real life.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the Stone Age.
Yeah.
And then the Industrial Age.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth.
Yeah,
Those are the only two I can
100%.
think of right now. The Ice Age. That's another one.
The Ice Age, okay, yeah.
So
Yeah.
not a certain amount of time, just basically like a bunch of stuff happened, but then something significant happened
That changed the
that
world.
changed it.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's why in the series, the breaking of the world, right, that's the defining mark of a new age.
Gotcha. And now, in between ages, it says that people forget
Yes.
basically things that have happened. Does that mean that people essentially die out?
Not
and
necessarily.
Then they carry on?
So let's use this as an example. So we know that the breaking happened 3,000 years before Rand time.
Yes.
Now, that's one age.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's 7 ages, if we extrapolate that a little bit and assume that like 2,000 or 3,000 years isn't a crazy amount of time, we're talking like 20,000 years for the wheel to turn all the way around.
Okay.
So a long time in the ages of people forget what's come and gone, right? Myths change, legends change, right? And that's kind of the entire concept. So not saying that each age is 2,000 or 3,000 years, but that's just kind of the idea behind it.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So I just wanted to go into a couple of symbols and just point out a few things. I have intentionally left out some things because I don't want to bring spoilers into the series just yet. But the first thing I want to talk about was the symbol that is on our podcast art. Yeah, so the yin-yang. So, no peeking at my notes.
I'm not peeking. I'm not.
I see that. So, first thing I want to talk about was the yin-yang because...
I can't even read your writing. Leave me alone.
It's not that bad. So, we have the half white, half black with a sinuous line between it. And obviously, Robert Jordan has altered it a little bit. But that's something that...
Yeah, there's no dots.
Yeah, there's no dots.
And I've also seen it where there's like weird eyelashes.
Yes.
On it.
Yeah. I think that's more of an artistic take.
Oh,
Because
okay.
if you think back to the Luz Theron Telemon, the symbol that we were introduced to in the prologue, that didn't have any cool lines in it. It was just the black
we
and
also
white.
added some lines. Like when I did the artwork for it, we changed it slightly. But
Yeah.
but I've seen the one with the, you know what I'm talking
The
about?
cornucopia?
Yeah, but you know what I'm okay. Enough. I don't want that brought up anymore.
I think that was the best thing ever.
That was embarrassing.
That was great.
That was really bad. But there's ones where there's black eyelashes in the white one.
Yeah. No, I know what
You
you're
know what I'm
talking
talking
about.
Like, you know the fake eyelashes that some people put on their cars?
Yes.
That's what that reminds
you
me of. And I know it's supposed to look like something else, but I don't know what it's supposed to look like, but for me, and now people are not going to be able to unsee that.
Yeah.
But
the fake eyelashes.
yeah, it looks like just eyelashes on this thing. But
yeah. So we're going to talk
that's
about
just an interpretation.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm talking about just the straight black and white symbols here.
Right.
So the nice thing about that is that kind of draws directly into our age because we have that symbol in our age, and that's why it's carried over, but slightly altered. But that actually stems from a Chinese philosophy of dualism, and the dualism just means that seemingly opposite and contrary forces can actually work together and be complementary versus just apart.
Symbiotic.
Yeah, symbiotic. Yeah, absolutely. So working together. Mm-hmm. So the interesting part, because I did a little bit more research into this, but the Chinese cosmology, the way it works about how the thoughts of how the universe was created was that it was actually created out of a primary chaos of material energy.
Yes.
So the energy, or as the Wheel of Time states, the force that drives the Wheel of Time. So there's that really connected dots of the Saidin and the female half of the source, which we have not actually got a name for yet.
That's true, we don't.
Yeah, we haven't gotten that yet. But presumably there is definitely a female half of that power, but that is the opposites sides that drives the Wheel of Time.
Because we have gotten some words. We've gotten like the Aes Sedai.
Yeah.
And we've gotten, what's it, the Angriel?
Angriel, yeah. That's the
like,
tool that
object
amplifies your power, essentially.
kind of thing.
Yeah. Makes you stronger.
Okay, but we haven't got the female.
We haven't gotten a name.
I didn't even realize that.
Yeah,
Okay.
we haven't technically gotten that yet.
That's true.
Yeah.
Do we get it soon?
Yes, we do get it soon.
Okay. Okay, that's all I need to know.
The last point that I actually want to point out that I want you to tuck away into your brain for later, because I'm going to talk about
More
this.
nuggets, okay?
Yeah, more nuggets, is that in the yin and yang philosophy, the yin, or the female half, which is the white side of the yin yang in the Wheel of Time, is a receptive power. So taking in, it's receptive.
Okay.
And yang, which is the male or the black side of that yin yang, is an active side.
So
receptive
is that how it is in the books, or is that how it is in Chinese?
That's how it is in the Chinese like cosmology.
Okay, and is it carried over in the books?
That's a great question.
Okay. Well, I feel like you're bringing it up for a reason.
Yeah, so I just want you to tuck that away.
Okay.
There might be something to draw from that's the same or opposite.
Right, you did say that. It's a nugget. Okay.
Yeah, nugget to tuck away. So that was the first big thing. And like I said, it's the whole real world symbolism that really kind of carries forward. And that kind of also explains why there's things in this series that is like so like noticeably real in our time.
Okay.
Right? It's not like he just stole it or anything like that. Second thing I want to talk about was the infinity snake.
Yeah.
Now, so we've seen that symbol before, snake eating its own tail. But I dug a little bit deeper into this one too. And like I said, please forgive me if any of the facts are wrong, but Wikipedia is a fantastic help.
I've already told you it's not a credible source.
It's credible enough for this.
That's true.
Just don't quote this on any, I don't know, papers. So the snake eating its own tail has a word, and it is called...
Infinity snake. We already know this.
Ouroboros.
Oh. Okay.
Yes, and I honestly have no idea if that's their correct pronunciation, but that's what it is.
I bet it's not.
So this is an ancient symbol in our world, and it actually stems back to ancient Egypt. And the first place where it was seen was on some, in Tutankhamun's tomb, on some scrolls. Yeah, so that's the first place that it has.
King Tut knew what was up.
Yeah, apparently. But the interesting part is that the snake isn't the only creature that was seen eating its own tail as this symbol. The other symbol was a dragon.
Okay.
Which is neat because we have a dragon in the Wheel of Time.
Oh, yeah.
Snakes and
we
dragons.
do have a dragon.
Yeah.
Except so far, we are led to believe that people think that the dragon's evil.
Yes. Yeah, so we're led in that direction. But we
also have the little snippet at the very beginning where we know he's not.
Yes. One of the really big things I love about this series is that we can get information from all points of view, but the characters in the story don't always know what's real and what's not real.
But we do because we're smarter.
Well, we get to see the actual account, right? I don't know if I'm smarter, but yeah. So that's the first thing. Now that was actually the symbol in ancient Egypt was adopted by the Greeks.
Yep.
And that symbol is largely relevant in two main things. One is Gnosticism, and one is alchemy.
Oh.
So Gnosticism is essentially like spiritual knowledge, and alchemy is typically related to magicians, right? Which is really simplified.
Alchemy is like medium.
That's why I said simplified version.
It's more like philosophers and that sort of stuff.
Sometimes philosophers, sometimes magicians.
My issue is I think about The Alchemist, and I also think about Nicholas Flamel.
The Harry Potter reference.
It's not just Harry Potter. Nicholas Flamel was a real guy.
Person. Yeah.
And he was a real alchemist, and there are tons and tons of legends of the Philosopher's Stone being real and created. That's what I think when you think alchemy.
Yeah. Yes. But the reason why I wanted to bring that up
is Harry Potter too.
Huge Harry Potter reference. But that's why I said simplified magic system, right? But the interesting part about that is that the infinity snake, or the symbol of the dragon, or the symbol of the Gnosticism and alchemy, is that, if you remember, who are the people who wear the rings?
I said I.
Exactly. Which could be said to be magicians and philosophers and wizards and all that stuff too. So there's that nice little connecting dots for us.
Yeah, cool.
So that the last point about the snake eating its own tail I want to bring up was the fact that in this depiction in ancient Egypt in our time is that on the scrolls that King Tut was found with, they were actually two versions of it, and was a depiction of Ra and Osiris, which are two Egyptian gods. And it was representing beginning and ending of time. Yeah.
Okay.
So it all kind of links together really nicely into the Wheel of Time.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah, I think that is a really nice link. And it's quite interesting that all of these symbols in history are said to represent some form of either power, magic power, or time.
Yeah.
And that's clearly what this entire series is based on. And we know that Robert Jordan is a very intelligent man, and he's not just creative, but he's also, he has these experiences, and I don't think that he just pulled shit out of his ass.
Yeah.
I think he actually knows his stuff.
He did his research.
He really does. He built his world and then built a story within the world.
Yeah, and that's
really
fantastic.
what it comes down to. He didn't just like create a character and create a story and then like tried to fit the world to fit the story. And I know we've had conversations about this.
Yes.
Way before I even started reading this, about what makes a good story and what makes a good fantasy world. He really created that world and then created a story that happens within the world.
Yeah, and that's why I've always appreciated this series, is because there's few, debatably, if any, like, plot holes.
Yeah, that's what I've been kind of looking for. I've been looking to be a little
It's
snarky.
hard to find, yeah.
I have been looking to be snarky, and the stuff I'm snarky about really has nothing to do with the writing. I mean, there's a lot of description, that stuff,
The winter's really bad.
The winter's bad. Yeah. We get it, man. But
I feel like Jon Snow needs to make an appearance here.
Winter's coming? No, winter's supposed to be ending, though.
Oh, yeah, winter
Spring
hasn't.
is coming.
Yeah.
Spring is coming. That's our new thing. But, oh, man. Maybe spring's coming.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm just saying that that's quite interesting that you have brought all of this to light, that all of these symbols in this book are related to
the interesting part about that too is that we're only 7 chapters deep.
Yes.
We have 15 more books to cover, so we will 100% do another bonus episode to keep talking about all the real world symbolism.
Well, this is really interesting stuff.
Yeah. So getting into chapter 4. Now, this is the big part where it talks a lot more direct links to our real world.
Yeah.
And this is why I was saying is that we can really draw a lot of good information
from...
from...
That's the chapter where we meet the Gleeman?
Yeah,
right?
So that's when Tom Maryland is talking. He's doing his little performance to get the village people hyped up about his
Gets the people
acts.
going.
Yeah, he's
it's
getting
provocative.
Going. Exactly, with his stories.
Yeah.
That's a good reference.
Thank you.
Yeah. And a couple things I want to go over is specifically when he's talking about all the different tales. So when we're talking about these tales, I'm going to point them out, and then I'm going to go into the description of what it can actually be related to in our real world here.
When you say tales, you mean like his stories, right?
Yeah, his stories versus actual real-life events in our time.
Okay.
And that's why when he opens with, I know tales from like long, long ago, ages before the Age of Legend.
Yeah, right. Like when he's talking about all of those different stories for men and stories for women, and we even talked about how it's a little bit reminiscent of like King Arthur.
Yes, yeah. So I'm going to actually omit the King Arthur thing for now because that's we're going to talk about in the future.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, we get a little bit more information in the next couple of chapters about that.
Sorry.
But nah, that's okay. So the first tale I want to talk about that Tom is referring to, it's on page 51 for anyone following along. And you're going to have to just go with me on this for a second here.
Okay.
You'll be more convinced by the end of it. But when he talks about the 1,000 tales of Anla, the wise counselor. Anla, the wise counselor. So he's actually referring to here to Ann Landers. Now, do you remember who Ann Landers is? Once I say it, you might know.
No.
Okay, so
quite honestly, my brain just thought Ned Flanders.
Okay.
So I'm completely blanking on Ann Landers.
Not Ned Flanders. So Ann Landers was the newspaper columnist that was really popular in the States.
Oh.
She was the advice columnist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it was,
yes.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
She literally had a column called Ask Ann Landers, and she did it for 56 years.
Wow. Good for Ann.
Yeah. So Ann Landers, that was a pen name. Her real name was Ruth Crowley. And she did the advice columns in the newspapers, started in Chicago, but then it was really quickly picked up by newspapers all over the United States, became wildly popular. So when we look at Anla, the wise counselor, she was literally Ann Landers, someone who gave counsel to debatably tens of thousands of people, right? So that's like a 56-year career. So that was the first one we just kind of wanted to point out. Now, the next one I wanted to point out was Egwene cuts off Tom and says, "Tell us about Len."
Yes.
Okay, now, Len is referring to John Glenn. So, John Glenn, because Egwene says, "Tell us how he flew to the moon in the belly of an eagle made of fire."
Yes.
John Glenn was the first American U.S. astronaut to orbit the Earth in 1962.
Very cool.
So he kind of takes away, changes the name a little bit, but then gives a little mystical story.
That is a little thing there. Cool.
About so flew to the moon, belly of an eagle made of fire. So very clearly, like, rocket ship.
Yeah.
And then Egwene goes on to say, "Tell about his daughter Salia, who is walking among the stars." So Salia is referring to Sally Ride, who was a U.S. astronaut, who was the first American woman in space in 1983. Mm-hmm. So John Glenn's daughter, right, in quotations, not really his daughter, but John Glenn was the first American astronaut. Sally Ride was the first woman in space.
Yes, and we know that Egwene likes stories of women going on good adventures, or whatever.
And obviously, daughter Salia walking among the stars. It's pretty self-explanatory on that one with her being an astronaut.
Yes.
Yeah. So then we get the next little tidbit here, where Tom goes on to say, those are old stories, right? Age before the age of legends. So that's kind of referring to that possibly our time right now in 2019 and back to the, obviously before times. Mm-hmm. That was the ages before the age of legends.
So you're saying that The Walking Dead caused a new age to start.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Like, what happened? Because I was just thinking, what happened to all of our technology then?
Yes.
We had all this technology. Then it all went to shit because of a zombie apocalypse.
So every TV show ever is all interconnected.
All of it. I love it. Yeah. Go.
And then Game of Thrones will be sometime after the world starts to rebuild, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. Who knows? Yeah. I guess we'll find out what's west of Westeros. So.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Yeah.
It's Randland.
It's just nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. So Tom goes on to say, those are really old stories before the age of legends, right? The age before the age of legends. Perhaps older, but I have all stories. And then he goes on to say, ages when men ruled the heavens and the stars. Yep. So talking about ages when the men ruled the heavens and the stars, that's kind of referring to, for example, our time, or maybe even in our future a little bit now.
Yeah.
Right? And then he also goes on to say, ages when man roamed as brother to the animals. So that would be before our time, right? Back in pre-civilization.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then he talks about ages of wonder, ages of horror, and then he also mentions ages that were ended by fire raining from the skies. Now let me ask you, what happened that ended an age with fires raining from the sky?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe a volcano that destroyed an entire city and preserved it all? Pompeii?
I was thinking dinosaurs.
Oh, even further back.
Further back, right?
Oh, I guess.
Fires raining from the sky, so meteors striking Earth.
Oh, right? I was thinking fire volcano explosion.
That's not bad though. I like that too.
But then okay, never mind. That's fine.
Truthfully, none of this is actually technically stated. It's
you're just implying it.
Yeah, it's all implied fan theory basically, and I'm sure that Pompeii could be a thing, but
I doubt it.
I was
now
looking
that you
bigger
said
picture.
That, yeah, well, because there were ages where man roamed like animals, which was hunter gatherer type of situation.
So we're going further and further back.
Before that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the next line he says
Pompeii was more
recent history.
Relatively.
Yeah, and then the next line he follows up with is ages doomed by snow and ice covering the land. Right. That's the Ice Age. Right. So that would be the big thing there. Now, Tom goes on to say, those are all pretty basic ones, nothing too specific, but then we get back into the really specific examples. So Tom says, I have all stories and I will tell all stories. Tales of Mosk the Giant. Mosk the Giant with his lance of fire that could reach around the world. So if we look at Mosk the Giant, that is likely referring to Moscow in Russia. A lance of fire that can reach around the world. What do you think that might be implying?
Oh, missiles?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Right? So there's a heavy a lance of fire that reaches around the world. Yeah. Moscow being a threat. And again, keep in mind when Robert Jordan was writing this series.
In the 80s.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah, so this is like we're talking about getting right out of the Cold War, 1947 to 1991. He started writing this book. The first one was released in 1990.
Yeah.
Right? So this was like just tail end of the Cold War. So obviously Moscow, Russia, Mosk the Giant being a threat, that was a real thing.
And that was like big then. That was...
Yeah.
What? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And then he also says, and so Mosk the Giant's, his wars with Elsbeth, the Queen of All.
Oh, you mean the one with a frying pan? Just kidding. Just
Nice.
kidding, I know.
Good reference.
Yeah.
So Elsbeth would be Queen Elizabeth, Queen of All, right?
Yeah,
Queen
yeah.
Elizabeth, England.
Yeah,
Pretty
I got
much.
it.
I think we all know that.
Well, and she's also not just the Queen of England.
Yeah.
And all of the British colonies.
Everything like that,
yeah.
too. And then the last thing that Tom gives reference to is Tales of Maturice, the Healer, mother of the wondrous Ind. So Maturice, the Healer, would be Mother Teresa of the wondrous India.
Okay.
Yeah. So it just kind of gives a lot of like all of the stories that Tom's talking about, the ages before the Age of Legends, old stories, older than anything else. That, like, typically a lot of people probably wouldn't know all these stories.
He's pulling from real life inspiration.
He's pulling from now time, saying that we're actually in the distant past of the Wheel of Time.
Mm-hmm. I'm still going with my Walking Dead theory.
To be confirmed. So that kind of wraps it up for the bonus content right now, because like I said, we're only on chapter 7 technically.
Yep.
But I do promise this is just literally the tip of the iceberg. There is a ton of more information I can go into for later bonus episodes.
Yeah.
And if this was definitely interesting, then I will for sure bring it back for you.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like our regular, Tuesday night.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we might as well just stick a microphone in front of our face and
talk it out.
Talk it out.
Yeah. So what I'd probably recommend is just as we're reading, start looking for these little tidbits.
Yeah.
And the next time we can talk more in detail about like the characters as well.
Right.
Because
so you want me to prepare stuff? What?
Absolutely. Well, maybe. We'll see.
Yeah.
This was fun for me.
Yeah, I think that this is where you shine, and I'm just going to go off on it. You get to control these, so...
Well, and the funny part is this stuff, like, I didn't even know for probably my first, like, 6 or 7 read-throughs. Like, it never even crossed my mind that there might be... like references to real world. So,
right. And so my question to you is, did you find this stuff out through other fans, or did you just like sort of come to you when you were reading one time?
No, definitely not all my original ideas at all. I can definitely say that with 100% of surety. I remember the days when I used to go on the Dragon Mount website. So Dragon Mount is like the OG Wheel of Time fan community.
Yeah.
And I remember the days of when I would like download MP3 files from Dragon Mount so that I could like listen to all the fan theories and character analysis and everything like that.
That's like the original podcast.
Yeah, 100%.
Cool.
And this was like before the books were even all released, so I just can't wait till we get further into this series so that you can suffer the same things that I suffered for years about not knowing theories that were actually true until the end of the series.
Okay.
So, yeah. But yeah, so that I like pulled a lot of this information from that, from more recent times, different websites, different, fan communities, everything like that. But it's a kind of a compilation.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, very fun. Very fun stuff.
It's good, and it's good for us to hash this out sort of as we go along.
Yeah, makes a little more sense, so you don't have to reread the series.
Well, I probably won't want to, because this is a very difficult way to read a book. Yeah. I don't know if anyone's ever done this, reading chapter by chapter, and then reading and, like, writing notes on the chapter as you read it, and then stopping.
It's like book studies in school.
Yeah, worse.
Probably worse.
It's worse for me. I'm just letting you know. I love reading, and reading's one of my favorites, and this isn't the best way to read anything.
Yeah, it's painful, but...
like, it's been great, though, because I've never been so in-depth, plot-wise, character-wise, literally everything about a book I've never discussed chapter by chapter. So I am getting so much out of it. Like, I already feel like a super fan being 7 chapters in.
Yes, and that's pretty early into a series.
Right. So I'm liking it. It's good, but I am feeling like I'm probably going to want that reread. Yeah. Just to be able to sit and read a book normally. Yeah.
Right. And we can do a second podcast on your reread.
Yeah. Oh my God, so fun.
So exciting.
So 15 years from now.
Yeah. Roughly.
Catch us rereading.
Yes.
No, just kidding. Hopefully not. All right. Thanks, Brett.
Yeah.
Hey listeners, we hope you enjoyed this bonus episode of The Wheel Weaves. And if you did enjoy it and are looking for more bonus content, some exclusive insider looks, and to just support us making great content, you can find us on patreon.com/The Wheel Weaves podcast. As always, thanks to audionautics.com for the music, and thanks to you awesome listeners.